I was born on March 14th, 1922. I was born in the home, in the back bedroom at the house on 21st and Jackson. It's a house that Mother and Dad were buying, and the address is 1021st Street. Well, all that knows or have known my mother has said that Laura Thurston Hadley was by far the sweetest woman they had ever met, with kind and tolerance. And I guess having 11 children, she had to be kind and tolerant to see us through. But she's very much as a mother you would expect any mother that she should be like that, to take care of her children. And she's very kind, especially to me. She was awfully thoughtful and kind to me. I remember once, this is just a couple of months before she passed away, I was leaving her kitchen area going to go home, and she followed me right to the door, and she put her hands out to embrace me and says, and she says, I want you to know how much I love you and appreciate you, and let you know that you're one of my children that I never had to worry and be too concerned about, because I know that you wouldn't do anything that you shouldn't. What a wonderful mother. My good old dad was one of the hardest working men ever. He was born actually right out in West Weber area. He grew up there. He attended school wherever he could during those early years. He met Mother at the time when she was a chocolate dipper in a chocolate candy factory there on 26th and Wall Avenue. Shoot Williams, I believe was the name of the candy factory. And they moved into Ogden, where they were married, and Dad worked for the Southern Pacific shops all of his life. He spent almost 50 years as a blacksmith there in the blacksmith shop in Ogden, and during the time of the Depression in the early 30s, they sent him to Sparks, Nevada, where he carried on the same job in the Sparks shop. But Dad was always good to me. One of the best things that I remember him, if he needed me, he'd always say, "Hey, Eddie boy." He never called me Ed or son or anything like that. "Hey, Eddie boy." He'd call me Eddie boy. That made my day, because I knew we were still on good friendship. He's a good provider. He was, to provide for he and Mother and 11 children. Life is good. I have really enjoyed living. I've enjoyed life. And I look back at the very earliest that I recall of things happening in my life. That happened when I was probably 3 or 4 years of age. Santa Claus came to us on Christmas Day and left presents. And I finally found out that Santa Claus was my Uncle Jess, his mother's younger brother, and he brought me a red wagon. How I ever enjoyed playing with that. Then we moved down on to 28th and Grant for a short time, and Dad was transferred to Sparks, Nevada, because of the Great Depression that was upon our nation at that time. We had a very good life there on 345 7th Street. And the schoolhouse where I attended was about 100 yards from my house. And I remember going to it wasn't a kindergarten or something like a first grade, but a high and low first grade. And being I was in school, mother was expecting another baby, and she had us 3 young kids under 5 at home. So she decided to get rid of one, so she enrolled me into this first grade class when I was only maybe 5 years of age. There I sat in this first grade class and looked over across the room, and there's my brother Glenn, 2 years older than me. He was in the high first class. And Joe, what a time we would have trying to keep track of one another across that Mary Lee Nichols Elementary School. Life was good. We remained there in Sparks, Nevada for about 4 years during the Depression, then moved back to Ogden, Utah. One particular thing, this is when I was about 7 years old, still living there, but Charles A. Lindbergh had just finished his trip across the Atlantic Ocean and was making passes throughout the United States just to kind of advertise his achievement. And he flew his plane into the airport at Reno, Nevada. My dad put all of us kids, the ones that could fit in the car, took us over to Reno to where we met Charles Lindbergh, the great aviator in history. And then my first real job was at the California Free Market, which was a grocery store that had a large produce section. And in this produce section, I remember it was one Saturday, the boss down there called my mother on the phone and says, "Please send one of your boys up here. We need him to help." And the mother looked out of the window. The first one she saw was me. I was playing ball right in the field next door. And she said, "Ed, get in here real quick." So I went right in to see what the trouble was. And she says, "Stan Kershaw wants you to work for him up in the California Free Market. Come in and get ready and get up there." She took me in, I bathed, and she put some clean clothes on, not fancy ones, just clean clothes, and sent me on up, which was only a block away, to the California Free Market. When I approached the manager up there, he didn't ask for any qualifications. He says, "You're who?" And I said, "I'm Ed Hadley." He said, "Okay, come in here." He says, "And start selling some of this produce." And I didn't think to ask him how much you're going to pay me or anything. So I just went ahead and started weighing out the potatoes, or selling oranges by the dozen, or anything like that that was in the produce line. Then when I got through, about 5 or 6 hours later, he called me in his office, and he was pleased apparently with what I'd been doing. He said, "Look," he said, "we're going to pay you 25 cents an hour for each and every hour that you work, each and every day." I thought, geez, 25 cents, that's more than I'd ever had at one time in an hour. So immediately I acknowledged the fact I was glad to do it. So we started working, and I continued working. It was probably just on a part-time basis, but usually in the evenings, clear up into the high school. I attended Ogden High School, and after dinner sometime I could go by the California Flea Market, and if Stan needed help, he'd say, okay, put on an apron. So I'd go ahead and I'd start working. And this continued on right up until almost the graduation time, because it was, oh, one important thing was about 1937, Social Security came into effect by law, and Stan called me into his office and says, Ed, he says, I have to read this to you. He says, we're going to have to start withholding a percent of your wages to send to the government for your retirement. Oh, this time I was only making 20 cents an hour, not a quarter. I was making 20 cents an hour. I said, well, Stan, I said, I'm only making 20 cents an hour. He said, I'll give you a raise. I said, well, all right. He says, you're now making 25 cents an hour. So it's from that time on to this next several months and up until almost the time the war started, I was making 25 cents an hour for every hour that I worked for the California Free Market. It was in the 11th year of my junior year at Ogden High School when I first met my wife-to-be, Betty Berry. And it was just a few months later when I actually knew who she was, but I wasn't able to even go on dates, no money or clothing to match, so I never went out on a date. But it was later in my senior year. In fact, it was just when school was starting in September of 1940. And as soon as school started, I was in an English class, just getting orientated, getting information from our teacher there, when the door opened and in come the principal and another teacher and Betty Berry in hand. And the teacher says that she was being transferred from another station or class in school into this particular Mrs. Marquardt's class. So then they left. So from that point on, Betty was in my class. But when the principal left, Mrs. Marquardt said to Betty, here, you come and you take this seat right up here. Well, that seat happened to be one row ahead of me and one seat to the right. So when I could look forward, I could see Betty almost completely, So I thought, well, this has got to be a good thing. So that was the first part of September. And by November, I had been commissioned a lieutenant in the ROTC. And we had an ROTC ball that was being produced normally. And they wanted us all there, but they wanted us to bring a girl or to share it with us. So I asked Betty if she would go with me to that particular show or dance. And it was on November the 11th when we had our first date in the Ogden High School audit program at the White City Ballroom. Now, we never did go steady, but from that point on, Betty and I had a great deal of love and respect for one another, and so it was able for us to continue to date occasionally. And then it was from there, we both graduated from the Ogden High School come June 1st of 1940. When World War II started, I immediately realized at my age that I would be inducted in the service. So I made up my mind of what I could do and wanted to do most of all. I had already received my pilot's training when I was in my senior year at Weber College in the first part of 1941. I had my pilot's certificate. So I thought, oh, if I have to go in the service, I'm going to go into the best outfit that I can go into. Looking and checking over all the military avenues, I decided to fly, if I could, to the United States Navy. I got my my military call in the first part of 1942. I had signed up and passed the physical and the mental, and I was called in the first part of 1942 to go to St. Mary's College in California as a naval cadet. And it took the next almost another 8, 9, 10 months of naval training before I got my commission and my wings as a Navy pilot. And that happened when I was transferred to Corpus Christi, Texas. At that point, my assignments in different naval aircraft were single engine, twin engine, ending up in a 4-engine PBY and a PBM aircraft, and then ending up in a B-24, which was my final squadron in the United States Navy. And I was released after the war in 1945, having served almost 5 years. And then I stayed in the reserve for the next 12 years. So that gave me almost 17 years of flying with the United States Navy. After graduation, I called Betty and we decided that the two of us would get married. And so within the next short time, Betty, her mother, and my mother took a train, came to Jacksonville, Florida, where we were married by Lawrence R. Rass from Ogden, Utah. After we were married, we were blessed to be able to travel about with the Navy for the next 2 years. And upon completion of that time in the service, we was able to return to our home, make a home there in Ogden, Utah. After we returned to Ogden, I started to work for the J.C. Penney Company, and then I worked for the Sprouse Rice Company for the next 32 years. And during that time, we had the blessings of having 5 children, 3 boys and 2 girls. They were educated in the Ogden City schools and were a blessing to both Betty and I for their behaviors. They were all married in the temples, and at the present time, all have a temple recommend from the LDS Church. I've been blessed being active in the LDS Church most all my life. And just recently, I was released after having served as a service missionary in the Monroe branch in Ogden for the past 13 years. People that I've had the opportunity of meeting in my life are like President McKay, president of our church, President Kimball, President Everett Taft Benson, and politically speaking, Cleon Skousen, a real good friend. And as I remember shaking the hand of Charles Lindbergh after he had completed his mission across the Atlantic Ocean, and my good friend Clayton Moore, who was the Lone Ranger. If I could just be remembered, that's something, regardless of for what reason or why. But I've tried to be honest with my kids and grandkids, try to encourage them. That's about it. But life has been real good because of it. Can't think of any special reason for wanting to be remembered. If you're loved by family, and loved by brothers and sisters, starting there, and your mother and dad, that is all real good. And having family and seeing respect and receiving respect from your, in this case, 5 kids. Life is so good. Anywhere beyond that, life is just take it a day at a time, make the most of it, and it'll take care of itself. I never wanted the big things in life. I'm a person that likes the normal things, the good things, the little things. That's my life. And now when it comes to family, I've enjoyed family all along. There's never been any problems that we didn't solve, Now I've got all these little ones, great grandkids. Jesus, this is a blessing to see them come along, and hopefully you can be available to help teach them those things, go along as they get better. I love them all and appreciate them. I expect a lot out of them. And some of these teenage grandkids, I tell them I expect a lot out of you. The Lord's blessed you and given you the abilities, the confidence to do these things. Just stay with them and get going on them. And most of them respond well, and most of them are looking forward to missions that I've talked to, They got years to go yet, but they say we're taking missionary classes, so things work out really well. This is life, the gospel of Jesus Christ, and if we put forth our effort to do as we know we have put here on earth to do the will of our Father, and things will work out, and there'll be a good life, and a happy life, and a contented life for all of our children. As I pray for every day, hope that things will work out that way. Hey, if you got any more of those fudge brownies,